Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What's on Your Mind. I'm your host, Nimari Belu. I'm so excited. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, here on What's on Your Mind, we talk about mental health all the time, but this month especially, we're really going to focus on not just topics around mental health, but like actual mental illnesses, things that cause them. And I couldn't be more excited than to have my guests with me today, Tyra Gardner, psychologist or psychotherapist with me to discuss anger management, cognitive behavioral therapy. We're going to have a great conversation. But to begin, Tyra, do you mind telling everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Naomi, for having me on your show this evening. And so, again, my name is Tyra Gardner, and I'm a psychotherapist out of Philadelphia. I specialize in anger management, and I work the my modality that I like to use is cognitive behavioral therapy. I work with individuals, I work with families, I work with couples. I specialize also in women's issues. Yeah, pretty much any type of addiction. I work with people who have substance abuse addictions as well as shopping addictions. So you know that's a lot, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, so pretty much anybody who has some type of issue that they want to discuss, I'm the person that you would want to talk to. Also, I specialize in business therapy. As business owners, people need to talk about some of the issues that they're going through, and I'm big on not taking displaced anger home to your family, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're a business owner, a lot of things can transpire within your business and you take it home to your loved ones. That's not cool. So I tell people, come to me, talk to me, or if you're not going to talk to me, find a therapist that you can talk to about what you're going through instead of taking it home to your loved ones.
I love that. Well, again, thank you for joining me. So to start off, to sort of kick things off, you've talked a little bit sort of about what you do, but
Mhm.
what is cognitive behavioral therapy and like how does it differ from regular therapeutic approaches?
Okay, so what behavioral therapy is, it's a form of psychological treatment that is widely recognized as evidence-based therapies for a variety of disorders. So one of the things with cognitive behavioral therapy, we pretty much we basically we look at the person's mind as well as their behaviors, right? And so the type of disorders that we treat with cognitive behavioral therapy is depression, anxiety, eating disorders, just to name a few. Also, our primary concern is talking to people about their thoughts, their feelings, as well as the behaviors, and showing how they're all connected.
So when we talk about that, like I know an area you really specialize in is anger management.
Mhm.
What are some of like the core principles and techniques that make cognitive behavioral therapy a better approach for treating things like anger management?
Basically, one of like with the techniques is being able to sit down and be able to process everything that's going on within that particular individual. Being able to sit down and just have that be able to process the behaviors that you're exhibiting, as well as being able to discuss the thought process that was going on, as well as how you were feeling. And so when it comes to, like, for example, with anger management, you have to be able to at some moment realize what was actually going on for those behaviors to transpire to get you to the level of anger and rage. And so talk therapy is a technique that is very beneficial with cognitive behavioral therapy that we use when meeting with clients.
Now, anger management,
Hmm.
everyone has anger, right? Like everybody
Hmm.
has a level of it and there's different things of it. I think when we think of the extreme, right, when it's at that point where they're like raging and violent and doing all those
Hmm.
things, that, oh my goodness, this person has an anger management problem. But there's
Hmm.
got to be signs before then, things to look out for that says maybe they might have it. What are some things that people can look out for, either with a family or friends or within themselves, that says maybe I should get some help before it gets out of control?
So one of the things I tell people to look at how, like, for example, we're gonna start because with anger it does start early. from childhood, right? So it starts with the temper tantrums. Okay. When you see people, like if you see a child having a temper tantrum, being able to have that, reprimand them right then for their tantrum and show them, the way that they are supposed to respond in regards to whether it's asking for something or how they should behave when they are different places, right? And doing things. So temper tantrums is one thing. When a person, I know one of the things that I've been seeing a lot with some children is the growling, the eye rolling, okay? When all of that, when people start snapping their fingers and looking at you in a way that is in a mean way, you know, when people aren't able to process their feelings when something is actually occurring, because they've always been discredited, that causes anger as well. So it's being mindful of how we address one another, and how we address children as well. Sometimes people will, tell basically, how can I put it without being mean? Sometimes we pacify situations, right?
Mhm.
Instead of reprimanding them, whether it's for an adult or a child, and letting them know. The bottom line is we a lot of people experience trouble with discussing their feelings with people, and when we keep all of our feelings bottled up, that's where we start seeing the boiling points happen, right? And when you have a situation where you feel like you can't address or talk to anybody about what's going on, that's when we see the issues start to bubble over, right? So, prime example, road rage, right? You have
Yeah.
problems at work, and everybody at work ticks you off, and now I'm going home. I can't take what was going on at work. I can't handle them. But when I get in the car, somebody cut me off. This done happened to me earlier today. I can't take this. So they decide they're gonna take their anger and frustration out on that individual.
And do you find that people who are they have anger management issues, because here's the thing, right? So there's a lot of stuff where it's hard to figure out, like, is this just a human thing and this human person is dealing with this thing, or is this part of a larger problem or issue
Mhm.
besides just that specific thing? So like, is someone with anger management issues a person with anger management issues, or is it maybe a sign that maybe they have like borderline personality disorder or things like that where it's part of a larger problem?
No. When a person has anger management, again, like you and I both know, everybody has some form of anger
Mhm.
within them, right? But that does not necessarily mean that this individual may have borderline personality disorder or any of the other disorders. Now, some people may have a touch of anxiety, they may have, depression, but normally that comes down the road, right?
Mhm.
After, a person may start treatment and we have that discussion, and then we find out exactly where the anger is stemming from. Sometimes, now honestly, there's at least 7 different types of anger, right? And but the most common angers that we see that a lot of people have is situational anger. And
Mhm.
situational anger is just what it is, because of the situations that we're in is causing us to become angry, right? And then the second top form is displaced anger, right? And that's where we take the anger out on other people,
And
and
yeah.
mhm,
No, I was going to say it's so interesting. I didn't realize there were 7 types of anger. Can you go
mhm.
over what those are?
Sure. And so so when we look at anger, it's look, this is like my baby. It's like I love talking about anger and the different types that we have out there, because a lot of people don't realize that, you know um that they exist. And so one type of anger that we have is, I don't want to miss any, so I'm pulling up my list
Oh, yeah.
because I don't want to miss I don't want to miss everything that I wrote out. And so one type of anger is we have trait anger. And so what trait anger is, oh, I wish I could pull the list up so I could show everybody what it is.
So there's a few comments, and hello, thank
Okay.
you so much to everybody who's joining us.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. I see Robert Dickinson and Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
Charles said, "Wow, I didn't know there was that many types of anger." Neither did I. So I'm
Yeah. So
joining.
I'm ready. So, okay. So trait anger. And so that refers to a chronic, long-standing personality characteristic that shows up as as a tendency, a constant tendency to become angry at every instance.
Okay.
Anytime you feel like it, you just become angry, right? And it doesn't really take much to get that person there, right? The next type of anger that we have that a lot of people see, which is part of the top three, is the passive aggressive anger.
Mm,
And so the passive aggressive anger is one of the most common ways of expressing anger. And so that type of anger is never directly saying that you are angry. Instead, it's, you find people that do things such as forget to do something, knowing that you asked them to do it, they forget it, but they really don't have an excuse to why they didn't do it, and so they use that as a way of getting back at you, right?
yeah.
And so so that type of anger is something that's, one of the top three, right?
I
We
have to
also,
confess that
what
I used
what
to
do you
suffer from
do?
passive aggressiveness. But at least, okay, so at least I clocked it in myself in my early 20s and worked past it. Because I would have instances where, like, oh, I thought I'd get over something. Then
Yeah.
I'd do or say something like real shady. And I was like, where did that come from? And I realized it's because I was still upset about something before. And because I didn't address it at the time, it was coming out later. So I'm a recovering passive aggressive person,
But you know what?
so I always have to work on it, but I really do try not to.
Yeah, but you know what? But you did good, because guess what? Here we are now, and you acknowledge that.
Yeah, yeah.
You acknowledged it. And and that's the first step, is being able to
That's
acknowledge
true.
what you did and being able to say, I worked through it.
Yeah.
You know, we have paranoid anger.
Mhm,
And the paranoid anger is when a person feels threatened or believes that everyone is out to get them.
mm.
And so when a person has those type of thoughts and feelings, all of a sudden they're the ones that start a lot of altercations
And it's hard
with
to
people.
combat that, right? Because it's like, how do you tell someone who's paranoid that they're wrong? Because they'll think that it's the same reason why conspiracy theories grow. Like, it's hard to rationalize with someone who thinks they know better than you. So even if you're
Mhm.
telling them facts, they're going to say, like, no.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I mean they're gonna say no because in their mind they feel that they're right,
Hmm.
and because they feel that they're right, it's no reasoning.
Right. That
It's
part.
no reasoning with those with people that have that. We have people that have sudden anger, and what sudden anger is, that means that the anger seems to come out of nowhere. So, it doesn't matter anything you say. They go 0 to 1,000 in a matter of seconds.
Hmm.
And it could be based off of something that you did 20 years ago or ten days ago. It doesn't matter where it came from. It's just something that happens, you
Yeah.
know?
So I want to know, the anger trait, is that DNA passed down through family genetics?
No,
Okay.
no, it's not passed down. When basically is when you think about anger is based off of all about behaviors, right? And a lot of the behaviors that we have is not passed down, especially when it comes to anger. Anger is a form of learned behavior.
Mm.
We learn to be angry. When you think about, like, when we were all born, right? The first time that any of us experienced any type of anger is when, well, back in the day, because I'm a 70s baby, when they used to say the baby was born and they smacked them on the butt.
Hmm.
That's our first time to anger. We become upset, we
Yeah.
begin to cry,
Yeah.
right? And so after that, then is what we learn at home. If you're in a home where you see people displaying their actions is displaying anger, 9 times out of 10 you're going to pick up on those those actions and those behaviors. Now, sometimes people have other people in their life where they actually, get rid of, where they don't actually show those behaviors, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. You
It
know? Mhm.
I was gonna say it does actually, and as you say that,
Mhm.
it makes me think, because I do think that part of my passive aggressiveness had to
Mhm.
do, and I've talked a little bit on this
Mhm.
series. I grew up around
Mhm.
some domestic violence. So it really took a while. Sometimes people grow up in that environment and they lean into it and they're like,
Mhm.
oh, they're angry, they're all those things. And I,
Mhm.
from that environment, learned to like always try to be on my best behavior and never make people mad and never do those things. And I feel like
Mhm.
because I didn't feel like I felt safe to express my anger, because
Mhm.
I didn't want to contribute to any of the stuff at home.
Mhm.
I think my passive aggressiveness grew from that, because when people would make me angry, I didn't feel comfortable expressing it, but I would still have that anger, and
Mhm.
then it would come out later. So it
Mhm.
wasn't until I got older and started really like addressing it and feeling like, okay, if you make me upset in this moment, I can tell you, or I
Mhm.
can say something without worry that it's going to be this huge
Mhm.
thing. And like that's how I was able to work through it. But
Mhm.
what you say makes a lot of sense about like what happens at
Mhm.
home is what sort of molds you into what
Right.
type of anger you have.
Yeah. I mean, some therapists out there and some psychiatrists and some psychologists rather will say, they disagree, where they think that a lot of the anger can come from genetics. But in my expertise and everything that I've seen in all of the years that I've been practicing with anger management, I've been seeing basically a lot of it not being from genetics, because I've seen where people come from homes where people have not display any type of forms of anger or anything, and the person, the child, or the child in the home basically got the anger based off of what they experience in school.
Mm,
So it's like their social outlets and the places that they've gone is where they got these behaviors from.
yeah.
Because at this point, social influence plays a big role on our mood, our behaviors, how we respond. I mean, we've seen, the influx of what can happen to us with social media.
Mhm. And I am fascinated by nature versus nurture. Like I could do
Mhm.
many episodes on it because it is so interesting. Like what about us is truly what we are, internalized, and
Mhm.
what we came up with, and what about us is
Mhm.
molded by what's surrounding us, and what
Mhm.
has a higher influence. Like what really depicts our,
Mhm.
our our character more. And it sounds like what you're saying is our environment is really
Plays
what's
a
going to plays a large part of that. And I
Mhm.
fully agree as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I
oh,
know I struggle with that too. Like
mhm,
I'm like, when it comes to certain topics with nature versus nurture, and it's like people are like, no, Tyra. I'm like, well, everybody, that's one of the biggest debates that we're going to always have when it comes to various situations in life,
mhm, mhm.
But again, yeah, but in my experience, I believe a lot of it comes from environment.
I agree too. And a time that I really learned that is, so you take. I know we've derailed a little bit off the anger. We'll get back
Oh no,
on.
you're fine.
You take those personality tests, and
Hmm.
I always say like, oh, it's interesting. I'm always very middle of the road on those. Like I'm very,
Hmm.
and part of it I'll be like, well, because I'm a Libra, I'm very balanced. It's what I
Oh,
do.
me too.
Okay. And so I'm like, it's part of my balance. But someone was also saying that part of it is because of my nature battling my nurture. So like
Hmm.
because of the things that I've gone through, and I won't
Hmm.
go through the list of my traumatic years, but it's changed sort of my nature. And
Hmm.
because my nature is battling my nurture, I'm coming across a lot more middle road because I'm
Hmm.
fighting it. And I think that
Hmm.
that's what happens a lot of times. Sometimes things happen. So like let's say you were meant to be the oldest child, dominant personality, but you've
Hmm.
grown up around abuse, so now you're very docile because you don't want to upset people. Like
Right.
you're not really that person, but
Hmm.
your nurture
Hmm.
has
Hmm.
made you deflect from your nature.
Right.
And so I think that's interesting, and that happens. And going back to the anger,
Mhm,
that's what really can sort of impact the way
mhm,
that we have anger.
mhm,
Monica said that she's learning how to respond, not react. I think that is
mm.
definitely
Yes.
a big one. And then I think we're about halfway through your list, so we will get back to that list. What
Mhm.
were the other types of anger?
Okay, so Imma save one one for last because that's pretty much what we're dealing with in society right now. But one of the types of anger is planned anger. So
Okay.
what planned anger is a form of anger that is deliberate. And so
Mm,
this type is all about control. So at first you won't even know that this person is even angry. Then all of a sudden the person all of a sudden becomes angry. The person's main goal is to achieve power by threatening or bullying other people, right?
mm,
So planned anger is, believe it or not, you see that a lot in relationships where someone would, like, let's say couple, one person don't want the other person to go out and the other person knows it, and then all of a sudden
hmm.
the person to start an argument,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden I'm leaving, but that's what they want to do anyway.
Right. Right. Yep.
So
That makes
that's,
sense.
yeah, so that's planned anger. So we also have habitual anger. And what habitual anger are, these people are grumpy and they usually tend to get angry at all things. Habitual anger is what, when you say good morning, what's so good
Mhm.
about it?
Yeah. Grumpy pants. I know some.
That person, and so with that, that type of anger is being able to know how to, talk, deal with those individuals,
Hmm.
if you choose to have a relationship with that person at all. And so the next type of anger is shame based anger. And these individuals are extremely sensitive, but they also need a lot of attention.
Mm,
When they receive criticism from others, it sets their it sets off their own personal beliefs that they are worthless. And this makes them feel like they're unlovable. This makes them very angry. So they'll then start blaming and ridiculing and criticizing others, name calling, and it leads to a lot of attacks on people. And so that's a shame based type of anger. The next anger we have is addictive anger. So, what addictive anger is, anyone, you can see from the name addictive, people with this type of anger are literally addicted to it. They look forward to the rush and
mm.
excitement that this emotion provides. And people with this type of anger, they pick fights. This is their thing. They love to pick arguments, they love to pick fights. And this is what they do.
I bet you those people love social media because they can
Yeah.
get in trouble. And you see it too all the time, like those profiles with no pictures,
Hmm.
and you can't at them, and they just drop the most obnoxious things, and then they run and hide, and you're sitting there triggered. Like, I really had to work through avoiding those people because I know that they're just doing it for the joy of making people upset.
Yes, I mean, they get in your spirit, but it's just basically being able to say, you know what, I'm not going to allow that energy into my space, and being
Hmm.
able to cut it off. The last anger that I'm going to talk about is something that we, see now with all of the protests and things that's going on, moral anger.
That's a big one.
Okay. And
Yeah.
what moral anger is, these people feel that they have every right to be angry at others who have broken the rules,
Hmm.
right? And these individuals feel they are superior to everyone, and they believe that there is a good cause for their anger. These individuals have trouble understanding that people have differences, seeing the world too simply. This is a hallmark style of anger. And so we see these types of angers happen all of the time. I wanted to address somebody in the comments I saw a little while ago asked about trait anger. They wanted to know exactly what trait anger was. And so what I can do is I'll give an example of trait anger. Trait anger is described as a dispositional characteristic where one experiences frequent anger with varying intensity, mild irritability, as well as intense rage. So it can go, you know, it goes, all over. Now, trait anger is where there's a lot of, I guess, conflicting beliefs, where they believe, where we go with the nature of nurture when it
Mm,
comes to trait anger, right? Some professionals say that it is genetic. Others say that is not. That is based off of societal influences.
mm.
Okay, so can you change? when it comes to anger, you can change, right? You have to want to change your mindset. Once you change your mindset, then you'll be able to start being able to make the change. Now, when you think about anger as a whole, when we think about all the types of anger that everybody experiences, the bottom line is all about boundaries.
Yes. Yes.
That's where, anger comes from, boundaries being crossed.
Mm. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so some of the anger, and thank you so much for Charles for putting this in the chat. There's trait anger, passive aggressive anger, paranoid anger, sudden anger, planned anger, habitual anger, shame-based anger, addictive anger, and then that moral anger, which, like you mentioned, we are seeing a lot of. And I have to assume, like, the hardest thing with moral anger is something we talked about a little bit.
Mhm.
I was di- I was
I
diagnosed
know
with
that's right, Charles.
something that we're seeing a lot of is, once someone feels like they have the moral high ground, like, good luck
Mhm,
bursting through them, and then also good luck helping them understand that just because you have the moral high ground doesn't mean anger is the way to lead with that. Like,
mhm.
and I
Right.
find a lot, especially with the protests, and obviously they're topics that are very important and like
Mhm,
really deserve that showcase, but that anger isn't how you're going to get things done. Like, it might light people up, but
mhm,
if you really want to make that progress, you need to get to a place of understanding where you can have actual productive conversations. Because
mhm.
just pointing a finger and yelling at someone isn't gonna, now what? Like,
Right.
hey, we're
Exactly.
angry, now what? And so
Mhm,
I think sometimes some of the hardest thing is when you're working in any area, whether you're being an advocate for mental health, being an advocate for what's going on overseas, being an advocate for what's going on here in America, poverty, birthrights, whatever
mhm,
it is, it's like you can have that anger to spark, but like, what are the steps you're going to do after that to make an impact, make a change, to do something? And I
mhm,
think that some of that is the great thing about the cognitive behavioral therapy that you do, because you can sort of bring them back down. Like, okay, you're angry,
mhm,
your spark is lit. Like, now,
mhm.
how can we, make that productive? How can we turn that
Right.
anger productive?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is the number one question I tell all of my clients to ask themselves is, and I tell this, I'm not just to them, I share this with everyone, right? Is it worth it? Ask yourself, is it worth it? Because what a lot of people fail to realize is when we become angered and we become enraged, right? It takes a toll on our physical body. All of a sudden we end up with high blood pressure. We end up with headaches. People don't realize when you get, let's say you're a diabetic, and let's say you become angry and enraged, that raises your blood sugar, right? And it causes other health issues. So so when situations arise, we have to start asking ourselves, is it worth it? What will I gain from responding to this situation?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not making it make sense, and it's not making make sense, let's make it make sense.
That part, yes. Now, besides just dealing with anger, there's other things that I worked on
Mhm.
with. Sorry, I keep hearing a weird noise. Do you ever
Uh,
hear weird noises and you're like, I live by myself, so what is going
like,
on?
mhm.
So, can you discuss sort of some other, what are some other like evidence-based treatments and interventions that help with anger issues besides necessarily just the cognitive behavioral therapy?
So with that, again, it would be case by case, scenarios, but we also have, let me see, because I only specialize with the cognitive behavioral, but I know we some therapists use solution focused therapy, which is
Mhm,
another area that I specialize in, also with helping people determine the solution to the problem, right? The
mhm.
other type of therapy that we use for anger management is ACT, which is acceptance, helping clients to be able to accept what is going on
That's
within their
acceptance
life.
commitment therapy,
Yep,
right? Okay.
acceptance and commitment therapy.
Mhm.
Yes. And so those two also help with that as well. So, and then we have EFT, which also is emotional focus therapy, focusing on people's emotions and helping them with understanding what is actually going on.
Nice.
Mhm.
Now, with these elements, can you discuss, is it good to have situations, or do you ever encourage people to bring in like family and friends for these types of therapy sessions? Is it better to like figure it out on your own so that you're figuring out how to deal with everyone and everything? Or is it something where you're like, maybe we should bring in your family and friends because they need to know how to react to these situations and help you through these situations?
You know what? I don't. Only if only if the client requests, right, to bring their family members in, for the therapy session. Majority of the time I do, I don't. We talk about, work on them, because majority of people when they are in or when they are receiving treatment for anger management, the first thing they want to do is I want to work on me. I can't worry about everybody else. I got to focus on me. I have to focus on what I need to do. And then we can, address the other people in my life. Now, sometimes you will have people who have a supportive family that will want to work with them and want to come in for a family therapy session. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't, because a lot of people don't want to hear their truths.
Mhm. Very true. And then can you discuss the role that cognitive behavioral therapy can play for other issues? We've talked a lot about anger management because I
Hmm.
think it's a huge one, but that's not the only
Oh
type of
no.
therapy or type of behavioral issue that can
Mhm.
be solved with that type of therapy.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It definitely CBT is used for depression. Having people discuss what they're going through in regards to some of the issues in their life that might be causing them depression. We also use it for anxiety. We also use it for some forms of trauma. So yeah, so so cognitive behavioral therapy again is just basically being able to help people, understand the connection that your feelings and feelings, emotions, and your behaviors have.
Mm. Well, I mean, this has been such great information. I can't thank you enough. Oh, and someone, so we'll do some comments.
Hmm.
Uh, Robert said, this great information. The older I get, I make the attempt to process a lot of situations while dealing with the public and certain
Hmm.
things that occur. I used to blow up about everything. Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is that, right? Like you get older, you realize what's
Hmm.
worth it, what's not worth it.
Right.
How to count to 10 can make all the difference in the world.
Oh yeah, taking deep breaths, counting to 10, being able to process what's going on, asking for a break, telling people, you know what? I need 5 minutes so that I can get myself together, so to think about what is actually happening. I'll get back to you,
Yeah,
and being able to provide that assertive communication so that these people understand what you mean without you coming out of coming out of your character,
yeah.
right, and putting you in a mindset and in a place that you don't want to be in.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time this evening. As you said, I've learned so much today. I appreciate you, and I say the same. Thank you so much for your time and for giving us a little bit of your expertise. Thank
Oh,
you to
thank
everybody
you.
who has joined us. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, get connected with you, how can they find you?
Sure, they can find me on Facebook at Tyra Gardner or at the Wellness Center of Mindfulness on Facebook, or you can find me on Instagram or X or TikTok at Anger Dr. Tyra.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. And thank you everybody who joined us. Again, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So we're having lots of great conversations. I'm super excited. Next week, we have our very own Izzy and Cassandra on the show. They're part of our Feel Good Talk family. And we're going to have the mother-daughter duo. We're going to talk a little bit about mental health and kids and have a great conversation with them. So please come back next Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.